Welcome to Paranormal or Reality. On today's video, we explore the effects of having a negative attachment. Sometimes gifts we receive have strings that come with it. Then we are off to investigate a pond where humanoid sightings are normal. Followed by the doll that goes by Rosalia. Lastly, we inspect a Ouija board experience from beyond the grave. Now make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Let's begin. My first Ouija board experience occurred in 2011. It was my senior year of high school. I ended up moving halfway through my senior year. Moving that late in the school year, especially senior year, definitely sucked. But I luckily made some friends quickly that I was hanging out with almost every day. On the weekends, we would all meet up at my friend's dad's house out in the country. His dad had a hot tub and pretty much let us smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol. It was a place big enough for all 8 of us. One night we talked about if any of us had any Ouija board or ghost experiences. No one had a Ouija board story, but a few ghost ones were told. We all agreed that we should get one sometime. A few weeks go by, we all kind of forget about the idea until one day we are leaving a football game, and we all go to a Target. We are in there looking around and end up in the board game section. We end up coming across a glow in the dark Ouija board. Before I get too far, I'm a person with a very open mind and have had many paranormal encounters prior to this, but the idea of the Ouija board didn't seem like a plausible thing to me. Especially with us buying this glow-in-the-dark one, it has to be a joke, I thought. But after this experience and another one that I had at home, made me truly believe it all has to do with your intent more than anything. All right, back to my experience. So, we buy the board and head back to my friend's house to chill for a bit until it gets around midnight. We were also waiting for 3 people to fall asleep because they didn't want to have any part with what we were doing. Eventually, those people fell asleep. As we get the board out, we were all sitting around the table. My friend's dad started turning off the lights. He brought out a few candles to lit. When he goes to turn the lights on, the lights didn't come back on and right away. That's when we all started getting excited. Growing up, my mom had books of different topics from UFOs to spells. I remember reading in some of the books about spells that when you do a ceremony like this, you should say some type of opening statement to the spirits, stating your intentions, and that this door you're opening is only temporary and that you'll be closing it when you're done. So I do that, and we start asking questions. The planchette almost did feel like it was moving on its own direction. We keep going a little longer, and eventually, one of my friends on the couch starts complaining that we need to quit touching and messing with him while he's sleeping. We all just look at each other in shock. We didn't know what was happening. So, we keep asking more questions, and a different friend sleeping says the same thing. That's when everyone starts to get spooked. The table we're sitting at was a round table, and everyone scooted towards my direction so it left an empty space. As we were asking a few more questions, that side of the table where no one was sitting lifted up, then dropped. Honestly, we should have stopped there, but we continued. We moved to the floor. I was the first one to move down with the board, along with my other friend. As soon we both got down, I felt the coldest breeze walk right past us. We start asking questions again, when all of a sudden, we have a couple things thrown at us from the hallway. After that happened, I said my closing part to close the door. We never used that board again. I believed in ghosts when I was little. I had a handful of experiences. I even had a negative attachment by the time I was in middle school. At that point, my mom got a job in a different town. I stayed with my aunt to continue attending school in my hometown. I never felt comfortable sleeping there, like something was watching me with deep hatred. I'd have nightmares of things pulling me out of the window. I would wake up in the middle of the night to a tall, dark figure standing in my doorway. I moved my mattress from the wall and would sleep in the crevasse to hide. In that house, I had sculptures that I made for my aunt would break. A drama mask made out of clay flew off the wall and split in 2. Eventually, bruises formed on my arms, like a big hand was squeezing me tight. When my mom noticed, she called her friend. We visited her aunt in El Paso a couple of times. I don't remember much of what happened. I just remember the last time being rubbed with an egg in a cemetery. When the lady finished, she chucked the egg as hard as she could. I told my mom, we had to leave immediately. After that, the weirdness stopped, and I grew up without really thinking about it. Over time, I became more agnostic. I would refer to science and physical evidence. At some point, I entered a destructive hedonistic cycle and drove myself into a deeper depression. The same could be said for my roommates. We all numbed ourselves in the same ways, so we didn't mind wasting away together. God forbid anyone try to get better. Come October 2022, that night I was looking rough when my mother saw me, so she gave me a St. Michael amulet she got from the Vatican. On the drive home, my girlfriend and I got into a pretty big fight on the phone. I was a couple of blocks away from my house when a black cat ran in my path. The instant the beam from my headlight hit it, the cat vanished. I relayed what I saw to my girlfriend on the phone. She asked if I was high. I told her no. But when I got to my house, we still had some things to say to each other that I didn't want to bring into a house full of people. So I parked and stayed on the phone. Throughout the conversation, I noticed a shadowy figure wearing a hat standing in my neighbor's yard across the street. It disappears when I looked at it directly, but I could see that it was there in my periphery. I should say that during this period I didn't have an interest in modern supernatural phenomena. I relayed everything to my girlfriend in real time. Its posture was defensive and intimidating, but not towards me. They weren't concerned about me at all, but they were looking just past me on my side of the street. I looked towards my driveway, where my roommate's car was parked, and see a tall, slender being. It was almost translucent and glowed a soft white. It had no face, but I could tell it was watching me. The second we locked eyes, it crouched behind the car. Its body was too big, so I could see parts of its limbs popping out of the car's silhouette. I felt the shadow figure's posture tense. That's when I felt tense. I got the feeling that the Hat Man was protecting my neighbor's house. I think our awareness had the white thing pinned. After 5 minutes, I felt safe enough to go inside, even though I could still see it. I went straight to my room, and my girlfriend sent me driveway footage from Kentucky. The second I saw the video, I froze. Goosebumps ran up my body. It was the same entity that was in my driveway. I could still see it. I want to reiterate that I haven't been living a spiritual life. I don't judge or push my beliefs on anyone. Live and let live. I lit some incense that my mom had given me to help calm me down enough to sleep. The next day I told my mom what happened. She didn't seem surprised. She already had a kit put together for me. While I was getting ready to pick it up, my roommate came out of his room with a noticeably hateful vibe. We were best friends, then everything flipped overnight. My sister helped me bring the kit to my house to start smudging my room. She was hanging out in the living room when my roommate left for work. She caught the same energy that I did earlier. He left the door to his room open. She saw a tall, skinny, pale creature standing in the doorway. I heard my roommate's door slam as I went downstairs. My sister grabbed her things from the couch and said I had a lot of work to do. I had to smudge the house 3 times, once with sage, Palo Santo, and copal. With each smudging, the smoke turned darker and darker. I found myself getting confused and arguing with myself, but I can't remember why or what for. By the time I got to my room, the smoke was black. It continued till I got to my closet. Then the smoke bellowed uncontrollably. It felt like I was going to choke. It was chasing me out with smoke. I said, "You can have this place, but you can't have me." A white ring of smoke rose from my copal to the ceiling. It grew and fell over me. The air felt clear. The house was quiet. I moved out shortly after. I'm trying to take better care of myself now. I see more spirits now. When I was a very young child, I had an imaginary friend I called Rosalie. I distinctly remember what she looked like in great detail, 30 years later. I went through a phase where I had a very old doll I named Rosalie. My mom said she would hear me on the baby monitor in the middle of the night, having full-on conversations with myself. When she'd walk up the stairs to mine and my sister's room, sister fast asleep, she would have this very reluctant feeling to put me back to bed, like she did not want to be up there. One day, I was playing with Rosalie, having a tea party in my room, when my mom came up to find the bedroom a total disaster. Like every piece of my clothing was thrown everywhere. She got upset at my sister and I, told us to clean up the mess. She said, better be picked up before dinner. I argued that it wasn't us, and Rosalie did it. My mom got even more mad and repeated herself. She then turned to walk around the banister to go back down the stairs. I distinctly remember Rosalie appearing behind her at the top stair, throwing her arms out forward. My mom fell all the way down the stairs, broke her tailbone and sprained her ankle. It was all so bad that my sister and I had to go stay with our grandparents for a couple of weeks. Mom and Dad were separated at the time. Mom was also taking night classes to finish her schooling. I guess I must have taken a lot about Rosalie because my grandma was spooked. She called and told my dad what happened. He took it upon himself to start talking with the neighbors. He told me years later that before him and my mom were separated, he always had very bad vibes in that house. He could never put his finger on it. So, talking with the neighbor across the street, he discovered that the house used to belong to an old woman named Rosalie. She died in the house of old age, at her kitchen table, allegedly was never married, but had an affair with a man who back in the day had a separate family with her. They had 4 sons. She always wanted a daughter. The neighbor said he attended her funeral and described the dress she wore during her wake. It was the same description of the dress that my doll Rosalie wore, the same dress I remember to this day. A black dress with little pink roses all over it. At her wake was a picture of her when she was young, same blue eyes and long red hair. A lot of other weird things happened in that house to everyone, but that's probably the scariest thing that I can think of. Mostly random things would go missing to the point that my parents would be like, oh, better check the shelf in the basement. Or cupboards would be open even though there was a makeshift child lock on it. Lots of other things have happened to me over the years regarding paranormal experiences in different places I've lived. That's just the most valid, weirdest one. My buddy and I were driving around at night just catching up. At around 2:20 a.m., I decided to go check out this pond we drove past that I remember having been to before with another one of my friends. It was behind a neighborhood, and there was a gate. Anyway, we went in. Obviously, it was kind of creepy because it was dark. There wasn't much light. As soon as we walked up near the pond, we heard geese. I even scared my buddy and got him pretty good. As we kept walking, we heard a noise and stopped. We kept walking, and to the left there was a path to the other side of the pond that went down for a bit. I didn't really have much light except for a little at the end. As soon as we got there, I looked down to the end of the path. I thought I saw something. I started looking a bit closer, and instantly I started feeling cold and got chills. I was terrified. I couldn't help but keep looking. I saw what looked like 3 white humanoid figures standing in a line at the end of the path. Obviously, it wasn't very bright, so I couldn't see them very well. But I could make out limbs and what looked like heads. When I looked down, I saw something was moving by their feet or floating, and you could see the shadow. Then suddenly 2 of them disappeared. The 3rd flashed. But when it flashed, it was either bigger or had gotten closer. As soon as that happened, my friend and I ran to the car. I slammed on the gas, and we drove off. The ride back was dead silent. When I finally got to his house to drop him off, he asked me if I saw them too. I don't know if I was seeing things that wasn't there, but I've never really had an experience like this before. It was genuinely the most scared I have ever felt. Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.